How better go, how better go there, how better go there, how better go where, how better go here, how better now, how better go.
Attending your first online property auction, what to do and what to avoid. Welcome back. I'm Ted Thomas. I've been involved in a subset of the real estate business called tax lien certificates and tax deeds for more than 30 years. The subset is primarily real estate that the property owners have failed to pay the property taxes. And when that happens, there's going to be consequences. So these properties are usually single-family homes, small apartments, small farms, sometimes even small office buildings, and they've been left vacant in some cases. However, in all cases, the property taxes have not been paid. All right, so that means that the county is going to do something about that. What they do is they use a due process of law, lots of default notices, and then finally they will confiscate the property and they'll sell it at a tax defaulted auction.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get her going here. Start me off. Where to bid to go? Have it $1,000. Open it up.
And when they do that, they're going to have a starting bid of 10 cents, 20 cents, 30 cents on the dollar, basically the back taxes. So these auctions have become more and more popular, and some of the counties will do live auctions. Many of the counties will do online auctions. Either way, this is a public auction. So it can be a public auction online or it could be a public auction offline. I'll be right back with the details. Today's discussion is about online property auctions and what to do and how to avoid mistakes. So to talk a little bit about that this is a simple business, but you have to follow the rules. So my approach to this process when attending your first auction is this: CYA, and that simply means cover your assets and do your homework. Every property at the auction is not a good deal. So rule number one is, after 30 years of watching and bidding and succeeding in this business of property tax defaults, I found out that a lot of people just don't go look at the property. So you need boots on the ground. So that's rule number one. You must have boots on the ground so that you check the condition of that property. In addition to that, you need to check to the title and make sure the title is going to be able to be cleared. Those are definite rules that you need to follow. So as I said, you need to make sure, even if you're busy, even if it's far away, that you have a trusted source or you do it yourself, but you must look at the property. So don't buy a property that you have not looked at the condition of the property. You'll be really disappointed. A lot of bad things happen to properties, and if people haven't looked at them, who knows? It might be a chicken farm next door, or it could have burned down. All right, now it sounds easy, but auction buyers are anxious, they're interested, and they're after profits. Okay, so many of these auction buyers that I'm meeting today are newcomers, and they're new investors, and they've never purchased real estate. So if you never purchased real estate, you need to get educated a little bit. Now, the wise investor in anything does some due diligence ahead of time. So you need to understand, tax defaulted real estate is really property that's used and abused. This is not the real estate that you see on real estate fixer-upper shows. These properties, some of them are used and abused, some of them are absolutely junk, some of them just need cleanup and whatever. But you need to have looked at the property. That's rule number one. Don't buy a property at tax defaulted auction unless you recognize how you're going to go about selling that property. That means when you look at it, you need to spend a little time there looking at the structure, looking at the conditions around it. Now, a property can be fixed. In most instances, they're okay to fix. However, you're not going to be able to fix a neighborhood, so forget about that. So don't buy a bad neighborhood because you can't fix the neighborhood. Now, local county officials spend a lot of time, extraordinary amount of time, to tell you that the auction is buyer beware. Now, what does buyer beware mean? It's a warning that the condition of the property is not warranted by the county. Okay, what about the title? The title is not guaranteed by the county. So buyer beware. Now, the county is going to say that on the website. They're going to say that in the auction materials. Everywhere you go, it's going to be said. So you need to be cautious when you buy these properties. Now, what are we talking about? What to do and what not to do when attending an auction. So if you're going to attend an auction, you need to be able to do your homework ahead of time. The county is going to transfer that property to you, and when they transfer it, they're going to transfer it maybe with a sheriff's deed, maybe a commissioner's deed, maybe a treasurer's deed. I don't know what the deed's going to be, but it's really going to have the effect of a quitclaim deed. Now, why is a quitclaim deed important? It's important because the county is quit claiming anything on the property. In other words, they're not claiming the property is okay condition-wise. They're not going to warranty the title. They're not going to guarantee anything. So when you buy that property, you're buying a property. Your responsibility is knowing the condition and knowing what's going on in the title. All right, what we're talking about, what to do and what not to do. If you haven't checked that, you're looking for trouble. You don't want to buy a property that you haven't seen and that you haven't checked the condition and you haven't checked for defects. Now, folks, I'm not an attorney. I'm not an advisor. I'm not a broker. What I am is I'm an author and a publisher, and I basically teach people about tax lien certificates and tax deeds. How do I do that? I learned about it myself, and I'm an investor, okay? So what you need an attorney. So you need to ask the good questions of the attorney before you buy so that you understand all the legal things that are going on. I'm not teaching a legal class here. I'm teaching you to stay out of trouble and how to avoid big mistakes. So what attracts investors? Well, I come from a practical world. And if you're buying real estate and you're getting the real estate from the county or the municipality for 10 or 20 or 30 cents on the dollar, well, more than likely, that's a pretty good deal. So if you evaluated the property you're purchasing has a good margin, in other words, you bought it down here at 20 cents on the dollar, and the margin is you're not going to sell it for 100 cents, but you could sell it for 60 cents. All right, so if you bought it for 10 cents on the dollar or 20 cents, and you could sell it for 60 cents, you've got a nice margin there. So if you've got a nice margin and you got a decent property that you can resell, well, then it makes sense. I didn't say it was risk-free. It makes sense because you're going to make a profit, okay? So let me give you a good example of this, okay? All right, I checked the properties before I purchased them. So I purchased a property online, but I went there first and looked at it. Then I came back to my house and bought it online. Now, I assumed my exit strategy was going to be $350,000, maybe $400,000. That was assumed because I went and looked at the neighborhood and understood the comparable values. I purchased the property online from the tax collector for a whopping $140,000, which I thought was 30 or 40 cents on the dollar. All right, I was very happy with that. No mortgage and no deed of trust. I later sold the property for $280,000. I bought it for $140,000. I sold it for $280,000. During that time, the market declined. The market went down. That's a risk factor. The market could go down. All right, so the property dropped substantially during that period of time. Additionally, the county issued me a quitclaim deed. That simply meant the condition of the property was my problem. The condition of the title was my problem. You're getting the idea. The do's and don'ts. I checked on that ahead of time. All right, so I would have to quiet title the property. So I hired an attorney to do that. Actually, it was a retiring judge, and it took 13 months for me to do that. Now think about that. I had to wait 13 months before I could sell that property. Did I have extra expenses? You know I did. I had to pay months and months of taxes. I had to pay the heat in the winter. I had to do the cleaning. I had to pay the landscaping. I had to pay the snow removal. I had to pay the security. You're getting the idea? What I'm saying is properties have risk. Now, I made a profit, and that was okay. But the point is, you don't want to buy a property unless you've checked it. So I solved my problem. Okay, I made a profit, but there's no guarantee of success. But experience has shown me it really helps out if you get someone you can talk to about this, like another experienced investor or even having a coach. Think about that a lot. It's not unusual for properties to be sold for 10 and 20 cents on the dollar. Now, the local county does not want these properties. So what they do is they have a tax assessed value on it. However, the treasurer can sell whatever price they want. The treasurer is just trying to collect the back taxes. So many of these properties are sold 60, 70, and 80% below the tax assessed value. Now, keep in mind, this is a business that you can build and have a one-person work-from-home business that generates six-figure income. You can do that. Now, this is not theory. It's not forecasting. It's a process. It's the best way to attract a big income right now. So you can get paid high income that you deserve, but you need to do your homework and know what to do before the auction and what to do after the auction. Now, this system works because it's been tested and it's been perfected with real deals when there was big money involved. Now, I'm about to run out of time, but before I do that, you see those little white circles? That's how many auctions are taking place within that state in the next 90 days. This calendar updates every single day. I'm here today to show you how to make money. To do that, I'm going to show you briefly that there are thousands of tax defaulted real estate properties across the 3,000 plus counties in the United States. This is quite interesting. You're looking at the Ted Thomas Magic Interactive Map and Auction Calendar. It changes every day. Now, I created the calendar and the map so I would know how many auctions are taking place every day in the United States. Now I can show the little guy how to make money. Most importantly, I created this system so I could have an auction list for each auction 24/7. The small population counties, they will have dozens of properties to auction. The large population counties will have hundreds of properties to sell. Okay, that's all available to you. Now, before I leave, 2 mistakes you want to make sure that you don't make. Mistake number 1 is always make sure you've looked at the property. I don't know what condition the property's in, and you don't either. So you need to check on it, because it could have been a fire, there could have been a flood, there could have been an earthquake, they could be next to a chicken farm, which is probably not going to smell very good in July and August. Or it could be a property that's in a bad neighborhood. My point is, you need to check the property, boots on the ground, or someone you trust, boots on the ground, before you do any buying. Second thing, it's very important that you don't make this mistake. When you are checking the property, look around. What's the neighborhood? Is the neighborhood good enough? Do some comparables. Know what you can sell the property for. If you don't have an exit strategy and you haven't looked at the property, don't buy that property. I'm Ted Thomas. I'll see you on the next video. Don't forget, request your free auction list right below me.